Hello, it's Andy. I'm going to talk to you about a little story in my local parish. It's a story of young love. It has a tragic outcome and ending. It demonstrates clearly that love can be the best thing that could ever happen to a human, or it also can be the ultimate destruction of a relationship and yourself ultimately in the end. But yeah, this is a story of two young individuals, and it has a very dark and sinister outcome. Yeah, so this story is basically set in a Cornish parish during World War Two. Now, during World War Two, most of the eligible fighting force or able men were drafted into service or volunteered into service. This meant that the jobs back on the home front, which was equally as important to keep the war effort going, to fight the, should we say, the forces that were opposing us at bay. And this job fell to organisations like the Land Army and the women's organisations that, shall we say, did all the work in the factories, the fields, the forests, the rivers and the seas around the coast. The women folk rallied around and provided that manpower to keep the country going. Obviously, there were jobs that were kept open for men, should we say, mining, heavy industrial jobs, and farming, which the men obviously had to stay behind, who were, shall we say, important in those roles. It was all about keeping the country going, the home light going, while the fighting men who were eligible to go went off and did that. Both sides of it had to happen for a successful outcome. Now then, the story starts with a farm in my local parish. The farmer had a son. Now, this particular individual was staying behind to work the land, which was, as we've just discussed, quite important. But there was also a lot of forestry happening in my parish at the time, and shall we say, a lot of young ladies who volunteered to help out came into the forestry section and did all the work that the men that had gone off to war was to have to happen. Now, that meant she had to have lodgings in our local parish, and she found them. Her foreman got her a job within the forestry section, and she had a good deal of friends, and she started engaging with the local community. It was at that point that she met this young farmer's son, and they instantly sparked up a relationship. In fact, they were inseparable, and it was, by all accounts, a love story made in heaven. And the young farmer's son was smitten. This was the girl for him. Now, they had local dances in the day, and obviously people would go to them, youngsters would go to them, and this was the social activity to vent steam and let off a bit of pent-up tension through all those hard efforts you put on the land and within the forests and the industries. So this was their light relief. The young lady in question was, an attractive young lady, and she soon drew the attention of other suitors' eyes, and other young men soon gravitated to her. She found that a little bit hard to resist, and would continue to see the farmer's son, yet date some of these other suitors. Now, you can imagine this would cause a bit of distress to the farmer's son, because obviously he'd fallen hook, line and sinker for this particular young lady. Now, he obviously began to feel jealous, rejected, and, shall we say, more than likely felt very spiteful about the situation. In the interim, and shall we say the long-term effect of that, was to bear a very negative result towards the young lady in question, and ultimately to himself. Right then, so basically one evening there's a local dance or a social event, and the young girl in question and the farmer's son both attend. Now, nothing was untoward, nothing was felt, that there was anything amiss. Anyway, it come to next morning, the lodgings haven't seen hide nor hair of the young girl. Alarm bells were starting to ring, because this wasn't the normal situation for this young lady, and they contacted the foreman that ran the gang within the forest, who she worked under. Now, they contacted, like I said, the foreman, and he did his inquiries amongst the work teams, and nobody had seen or heard anything. There was nothing amiss when they last saw her and everything like that, so everybody was kind of shocked but concerned at this point, because this was out of character. Anyway, after a little while longer and fruitless attempts to track this young lady down, they contacted the local bobby. Now, back in these days, there was no phones like mobile phones, fast internet connection, computers, fast cars. There was none of the modern trappings our police force had. It was simply the village bobby, or country bobby shall I say, going about his daily business, and then if something like this happened, he would follow the local chain or line of inquiry. He would have had local knowledge to people, had his ear to the ground, would have understood and known some of the situations that were going on. So anyway, he would use that in conjunction with the information he'd been given and work his way back through the chain. Now, obviously by doing that, it didn't take him long to arrive at the farm, and speak to the farmer and his wife about why he was there and why he needed to speak to their son. They engaged in a little bit more conversation on this particular topic, and then obviously the time came where they needed some answers from the son. As they got to the foot of the stairs and was about to call him down, there was an almighty bang. It really was a bang by all accounts. Anyway, on closer inspection, when they went up into the room, the farmer's son had taken his own life with the farm's very own shotgun. That was tragic, but on inspection of the farm outbuildings through research, they did actually find the body of the young lady in question, and she was dead, murdered. This was really tragic, and the whole community felt this because it was a senseless waste, or a tragic waste of two young lives who had their whole lives ahead of them. They were both well liked, and indeed, as we all know, whether you get rejected or not, most of us have experienced that, you pick up and move on. Unfortunately, it seems the young farmer's son in question was just so head over heels in love, besotted, however you want to put it. He could not see no way out of it by not being with her, and indeed obviously he felt, shall we say, that the other suitors were a threat to his claim on the young lady, and ultimately what happened on that night between the two, what was said, what was done, will never be fully known, but the result was that she ended up being murdered and he took his life. And that is a thoroughly tragic story and a tragic outcome for a story that started so positive and with so much promise of young love and possibly the promise of a bright future ahead of them. But as you can see, love has many twists and turns, and as we all know, it can be the most beautiful thing between two humans or possibly the most destructive. So I'm going to sign out here. I hope you all take care. Yeah, cheers.